Well, let's call our meeting to order and stand up and pledge the flag. Thank you all for coming and look forward to our meeting here. Hang on just a second. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President, may I ask that the members of the audience turn off their cell phones at this time or silent them, please?
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order and establish quorum.
Mr. President, all members of the board are present.
Okay, and did we have proof of notice?
We did.
Okay. Do we have resident comments on the agenda topics?
Yes, we do. The first is Kevin Stanton.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kevin Stanton. I live on 2711 Maribel Court. Oh. There we go. So we're now. My name is Kevin Stanton. I live at 2711 Maribel Court. I'd like to talk about item 9 on noise enforcement policy. My next door neighbor, there's a renter there. It's on my east side of my residence. They have a bird that sits out on their lanai all day long, and it calls, it yells English words. It's very disruptive on a Saturday. I work, myself and my wife work during the day, so we don't know what's going on during the day. But Saturday mornings, all you do is you hear the bird squawking. It just ruins your morning. So my wife has gone over there and talked to ask them to take the bird inside. They do, but the next day it's back out, so it'll be out there Sunday morning. I have a little audio I'll play. Maybe I can't play it here. Oh, maybe that's it.
Right.
So that's every weekend morning that we hear it. So if you can please consider that for the noise enforcement policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Have a good evening.
Next on the agenda, Brenda Shutter. I'm sorry? Sluter. I am so sorry.
That's all right. That's a tough act to follow on that noise enforcement. I'm here for noise enforcement also, and I brought it to your attention. I believe you brought it to the board, and I see where possibly it could be addressed tonight. I live next door within feet of wind chimes that ring 24/7. We get a nice breeze. I cannot have my windows open. I cannot sit out on my lanai. I can hear them when the windows are closed. I can hear them during the night in my bedroom. And I really think I would appreciate if something could be done, because I am at my wits' end, because all I hear is it's constant. It's not every now and then. It's a constant ringing. In fact, on the way over, my neighbor mentioned to me, I kept hearing this noise all night long. She lives 2 doors away from these people, and that's what it was. It's the wind chimes. I don't think living this close to one another, something like that should be in your yard.
I appreciate it. And for you and the previous gentleman, our policy we're considering tonight also includes information on the city of Cape Coral. There's 2 methods. Well, there's one method right now that you can use, and the association can send deed restriction letters, but the challenge for us is yours is easier for us, but the bird or the dog, a lot of times staff is not available to go confirm it, and it's generally, we've got 3 other dog noise complaints too, and so it's tough for the association because we can't violate people without evidence. So what we do is the policy tonight will address that. We can send a hearsay letter, meaning that's what we've done. Thus far, we said it's been reported that if this is true, here's the rule, please follow it. If it's not true, please accept our apologies in advance. Type a letter because we just can't violate someone. So again, the policy tonight will help, it will address that. and also the city of Cape Coral can help you as well. And so our hope is tonight that after tomorrow, we have two methods
Okay.
to help combat this instead of just one.
Okay, I mean,
right.
it may seem like nothing to some people, but when you're hearing this
Yeah.
constant ringing day in and day out, and it doesn't stop at all, especially the past couple days with all the wind, it's just been going and going and going.
Understandable, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the speaking is Linda Duclos.
Yes, it's Linda Duclos. I don't know if you can hear me. I live in the Greendale section, and I'm here regarding Article 13 and 14, the Art Committee's new recommendations. I wanted to say how my notes are all on my phone. That's why I didn't shut it off. My notes are on my phone, so that's why my phone's on. I'm really worried about our tropical paradise here, because it seems like we're trying to change that, you know, because flowers are part of paradise, right? And that was the bill of goods that we were sold when we bought our house. The tropical colors of the houses, everything was tropical. We had the lagoon pool, the tiki hut, and I kind of get the feeling they want to ban flower pots, and I'm kind of worried. So that's kind of why I'm here tonight.
Appreciate
And
it.
that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Got a lot of other notes, but that's what I meant.
Thank you. I just want to also encourage the people here and people that might be watching. This is a great opportunity, and I wish more people would address the board on agenda items. State legislation requires that we post notice of the meeting, but it doesn't require that we post an agenda. That's why it's my personal effort to post that agenda, not only in the clubhouse, but also to send it out so you guys know what we're going to discuss, and it gives you the opportunity to get some feedback on it prior to the board's vote. So thank you for coming in. It concludes the agenda item
Okay.
topics.
Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes that were included in the board pack? Are there any changes, corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second? All in favor of approving the minutes as posted, please raise your hand.
And Don, I failed to mention this to you ahead of time. If you would not mind, sometimes the notes are contradictory, and on the video, it's hard to tell and hear sometimes if Vic can't get the picture. If we could repeat who made the motion, who made
Okay.
the second, that would help us a whole lot.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll try to do that.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to do that for you, Secretary. Molly moved to accept the December 19th minutes. Marilyn Stout seconded the motion. It was a unanimous vote by all members.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, we'll move on to the board president's report. And since I was unable to talk last month, this report's a combination of my December and the current January report. It's exciting to report that several projects within Sandoval are actually at the crest of completion or completed. The streetlight project has 7 newly installed poles and fixtures. These new LED lights are extremely energy efficient, and it should alleviate some serious safety concerns in several neighborhoods. Personally, I've received very little feedback on the lights, so I hope it's been well received. So if anybody has feedback, I'm interested in hearing. All of our lakes are now receiving full aeration. The lake vendor has high standards and recently suggested moving several aerator boxes to better locations and to shore up some deficiencies that he identified after they had been put in. I'm impressed by that, as a matter of fact. The next step is to replace the needed landscaping around the aerators to fully complete the project. Allison Johnson has identified each area, and plans are already in the works for these new shrubs. So as soon as we get the sign-off from by us for the aerators and their locations at each site, then we will proceed to get that landscaping put in to make that project finalized. The electric for the fountain around has been relocated to the new, and the new fountain is on order. Now, that fountain, the meter was on Belleville. Actually all the controls were in one of our residents' backyard on Belleville. And since we had new power supply by the aerator, and we were going to do something with the fountain, it only made sense that we could combine those two at the same location. So we have done that. So now it's out of the backyard and it's over in the bushes, and that's going to get a little more landscaping too. And so I think that's a positive step. So as I said, the new fountain is on order. We're only waiting for an install date, and I have to acknowledge it's long overdue. But with a complete change out, which is going to be happening, if you'll notice, the other fountain's gone completely. I am optimistic and looking forward to a new, a better, and more efficient fountain. So I think we're going to, and one of the positives about this fountain is that it's a component develops so that if one component goes out, that can be replaced, not a whole motor and pump and everything. So it really has some, I think, some positive characteristics to it. All right, now, the two parking lot projects have approved city permits. Stevens Construction, specifically our newly hired construction manager, Mark Stevens, offered to handle the bidding process with the 5 paving companies. And they produced a spreadsheet of all the companies, and they had all the areas of scope, which is this page and the next page, things that we might not think about, so that you could do a fair comparison of each one of these bids. This was a no-charge service to the HOA. In addition to this bidding spreadsheet, he also provided an estimate for landscaping, so that when we're coming up with how much we need to approve for this project, we had that number as well. So we're currently reviewing them and in preparation for selecting a vendor. And Al Roper has been spending hours on the phone, hours waiting for the phone to ring from each one of these vendors with an update on their proposals, because there's some overlap, there's some things that can be taken out, and he's isolated some areas in there that, maybe we can save a few dollars. So when we make this presentation later, it will be the maximum, and hopefully we can whittle that down to something a little less. And the plans for the parking lots are available, and I suggested that we put the front page of each one of those plans on the website, so that residents have been asking about it, so that there'll be a go-to place so they can see those, if we could, please. The 84-acre project is still on the board's radar screen. The entire board has had behind-the-scenes involvement with this project. It's one of these things that's very sensitive, but I can rest assured the board is 100% trying to get the very best outcome for Sandoval that we can. And the hearing's been postponed several times. It's now rescheduled for the 25th of February at 9 o'clock in the City Council chambers. The Clubhouse Improvement Committee met with the architect and the construction manager on January the 15th, with another meeting scheduled on February the 12th. I've been approached by several residents with their wishes and desires. Every option is still on the table. I've been hesitant to make any promises. In fact, I would rather make no promises and then there'd be something better. But rest assured, the plans are not finalized, and we're still working to provide as much as we can for our $1.9 million. Our electronic voting implementation remains on track, with the election group diligently working to ensure a smooth rollout. As a side note, I recently spoke with one of our Canadian residents whose municipality has an electronic voting system. They also, like us, have the paper option. And he stated that voter participation had significantly increased, so in that regard, I'm optimistic. The Vermont wall has started to come crumbling down. It's shocking to see how frail the vertical posts were, rust and cracks, and it was just a matter of time, then we would have had more breaches, even if someone hadn't tried to climb over it. So it was a long overdue project. Our expectation is a 3-week construction period, so please bear with us during that time. And I realize there's some compromises you have to make when you take a wall down, but rest assured, one's going up, and the one that's going up is a permanent lifetime wall. So, and everyone sitting in this room or listening, we will not be talking about the Vermont wall and replacement in our lifetime. The Architectural Review Committee has been in very serious deliberation and have some recommendations for the board tonight, I understand, regarding standardization of paint and the types of fences and some other items, and they'll be reporting later. So as you can see, my fellow board members are working nonstop for the community, every single one of them. They have little time for anything else, and I personally want to commend and thank each of them for their diligent work helping make Sandoval the best it can be. End of my comment.
Thank you. Bill?
Okay, I need everybody to stand up, raise their hands, move their necks around, get some blood flowing. It's going to take a while. Treasurer's report. Item 1, November 30 and December 31 financial highlights. A, the association completed the year 2019 with a loss of $24,208 pre-audit. The final number is subject to change after our auditor completes his field work and presents his opinion letter. B, the item construction in process remains on our balance sheet in the amount of $122,996 as of this date. We will be having discussions with our auditor about writing off this asset as worthless, which could have a material impact on the final loss recorded in our December 31, 2019 income and expense statement. However, whether we restate the 2018 financials to record the write-off when it occurred or do it in 2019, it will have the same impact on the December 31, 2019 fund balance. That fund balance will be about $100,000 lower than is reported in our December 31, 2019 financial statements as presented and posted on our website. If you looked at the financial sections of our community website, you will have noticed additional pages when compared to the information posted previously. We are now posting a schedule of all expenditures from both the Reserves Fund and from the Telecommunications Fund on the web for all homeowners to review should they wish to do so. Item 2. Since our May meeting, the General Manager has worked to recast the budget to ensure we end the year at or near our budgeted amounts. As of December 31, 2019, we are $564,666 over budget in income recognized and $588,874 over budget in total expenses. Not surprisingly, the difference in these two numbers is the $24,208 loss. This issue will be discussed later in item number 6. Item 3, there are no CDs maturing in December. The next maturing is on March 16, 2020. Interest rates on current available CDs seem to be up a tick. The Finance Committee has scheduled a local bank trust officer to come to our March meeting to discuss alternatives to our current investments and the risks associated with any changes we might consider. Item 4, the report of December 12 of the December 12 meeting of the Finance Committee are incorporated herein. December 21st, a typo. Incorporated herein. Discussion of the November-December financial statements, investment policy discussion continued, and that was from item 3 that we just talked about, and a discussion of FASB topic 606 in the FICPA, Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants white paper regarding its implementation. That's going to be item 6. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Item 5. As of this time, December 31 balances in the reserve funds and telecommunication fund surpluses are $2,398,564 and $1,975,326 respectively. Item 6, and here we go. FASB Accounting Standards Update amending FASB Accounting Standards Codification ACS Topic 606, Revenue from Contracts with Customers, Subtopic 340-40, Other Assets and Deferred Cost - Contracts with Customers. Is everybody awake? This is where we're going. This is a major change in the way we account for things, and that's the reason I just told you the revenue was 500 and something thousand over the budget and the expenses were as well, and this will explain why that happened. In May of 2014, the Financial Accounting Standards Board issued ASU 2014-09 dealing with the issue of revenue recognition. Most public entities were required to adjust methodology of revenue recognition standards for the periods beginning after December 15, 2017. That's January 2018 when they started. All other entities, including HOAs, were required to apply these revenue recognition standards for annual reporting periods beginning after December 15, 2018. That's 2019, so that's our current financial paper statements. The core principle of Topic 606 is that an entity should recognize revenue to depict the transfer of goods or services to customers in an amount that reflects the consideration to which the entity expects to be entitled in exchange for these goods or services. That's basically saying the matching principle. Revenue and expenses should be in the same period, that you don't recognize revenue early and then have a lot of expenses later on and they get out of sync. They should be together. I could give you 30 more pages on the specifics of the accounting standards codification, and if you're interested, I'd be happy to, but we'd probably have to set up one of the new rooms in the clubhouse as a classroom so we could have accounting one-on-one classes, but to cut to the chase, this impacts the Sandoval Homeowners Association in its treatment of the collection, expenditure, and reporting of reserves, and as an extension, its treatment of our telecommunications fund. Currently, the Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants, FICPA, is preparing a white paper on how the issue impacts HOAs and condo associations. Our auditor, Tony Gregory, is one of the authors of this white paper, and we'll be presenting it to them. Tony informed me the current membership of the FICPA is split down the middle on how to deal with the issue, and he feels that Topic 606 should not be applied to the Sandoval HOA. Tony's feeling is, and this is important, when a member of the HOA pays his quarterly assessment into our reserves, he, she, it, whoever pays it, does not pay in to repair a road this quarter, or to repair the clubhouse roof next quarter, or to replace a gate in the third quarter, but pays it to have the quiet enjoyment of all common elements, secure in the knowledge that when repairs or replacements are needed, they will be done. For this reason, he and about half of the membership of the FICPA feel that our current pre-November 2019 method of reporting, collecting reserves, and when expenditures are made, the reserve fund balance and the reserve cash balance are reduced, but no further recording or accounting is done. I reminded Tony that Sandoval residents do not pay into quarterly assessments for reserves, but at the time of sale, the purchaser of the property in Sandoval makes a $3,000 capital contribution to cover the future reserve needs. Reminded of this fact, Tony reversed his position on Topic 606 because we do indeed enter into a contract for future services. He now supports the position for Sandoval that Topic 606 should be adopted, and as our auditor, he will require us to do so. How, you might ask, does this impact our financial reports? The answer is that it materially impacts our financial reports. In the past, when an item was approved by the board in a BAR, a contract for the work was signed, the work was performed, the vendor billed us, and we paid him. These payments were not reflected in our financial statements, other than the balance in both the reserve cash balance and the reserve fund balance on our balance sheet were reduced. Unless you were watching very carefully, you would not notice this transaction. Luckily, the accounting department at Pope Properties maintained a spreadsheet tracking all of the contributions and expenditures from reserves, as a telecommunication fund was treated as a quasi-reserve fund. The same procedure was followed with that fund. Prior to April 2019, when I became a board member and the treasurer of the association, I was never provided a full financial statements and was unaware of the existence of these spreadsheets. And in fact, none of the board members seated here tonight who remained in office after March of 2019 understood that these spreadsheets existed either. After discovering their existence, I made it my business to ensure all board members, as well as the Finance Committee, were given this information. Under Topic 606, we will now place the funds into the appropriate fund, reserves or telecommunications, until they are appropriated, a BAR is approved, and when the expenditure happens, we will report both the expenditure and the revenue to offset that expenditure in our monthly income and expense statement. This fulfills the accounting principle of matching, as we recognize the revenue at the time appropriate to match it with its expenditure. The net impact on the income and expense statement, bottom line, will be zero as they offset each other. But the impact on our approved budget will reflect both the additional collection of revenue and the additional expenditures. We have to accept this and learn not to get excited by individual line items exceeding budgeted amounts as we read our financials. That's the exact reason. We've done that for the year of 2019. That is why we're showing $500,000 more in revenue and $500,000 more in expenditures than the budget allowed, because that's what we spent in reserves and in telecommunications funds. So they're now in your P&L where they never were before. So to assist in this, we will continue to maintain the above spreadsheets and post them monthly with our financials on the community website. In fact, if you visited the Sandoval website and looked in the financial sections, you will have noticed an additional page in the November financials. That page is the spreadsheet reporting all telecommunications expenditures since June 1 of 2019. We will get the other spreadsheets included in future postings, and they are there for December, so that the homeowners will have this information available and at their fingertips if they choose to review it. Again, I remind you, this change in our accounting and reporting is not at the direction of the board or our treasurer. It is mandated by the Financial Accounting Standard Board, FASB, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, AICPA, and our auditor. Any questions?
I have one question. You're talking about the write-off of $122,000.
Right.
The survey, the permitting and checks to the city for the site work. So really, the write-off, some of that's useful.
Correct. And
So
that's what
I
the-
just want to make sure
that's
that
what the
we know
discussion
that.
with
And I
the
knew you
auditor will
did,
be,
but
is
I
the-
just wanted to say that out
to
loud.
how much the write-off might be.
Yeah, and then as we get some funds back from the architect, that will help,
Yes.
defray some of that too.
That would in essence write some of that off.
Yeah,
because
so
it would be
I
applied
just bring that up so that everybody's clear, that number might not be as dire as it was.
Normally, we don't take questions from the audience with a report like that, but since that was so lengthy, can I take a few questions? Because
Sure.
I saw a hand go up.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
You spoke about us with the $3,000. Or up there.
Yeah, right behind you, right?
It's not on.
It is on. Should be good.
You spoke about us with the $3,000 payment into the reserves and not paying monthly in our dues. Is the accountant now saying that he would recommend that we change that process?
He is not addressing that. That is in our documents.
Okay.
This board at some point may talk about that, but to change that, I think we would have to go to a vote of the residents to change that.
Okay, thank you.
No, I don't think you have to have a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not substantiated
No.
in our documents.
No.
Can you put this on the website,
That's what I was going to ask.
please?
You mean my whole dissertation?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
It's in my treasurer's report, so is the treasurer's report posted to the website?
Yes, I sent the treasury report to the Communications Committee tonight, about 30 minutes before the meeting, and so it should be posted tomorrow.
Any other questions? All right,
I yield the floor then.
here you go. General Manager's report.
First announcement is for those of you who know Tracy Correntz, our administrative coordinator. She was offered a position and has resigned from her position here. So we're really sad to see her leave. There is some good news, if there is any silver lining, if you will. In August, when Tracy was interviewed, we had 3 board members and Carol Essig interview 3 candidates, the final 3 candidates, if you will. And 2 of those candidates were deemed hireable. And in fact, all 4 interviewers, I was an observer at that point, all 4 interviewers stated that I could hire either one of the 2 and they would be happy. But we did have 2 board members or 2 interviewers prefer one slightly over the other and the 2 for the other candidate. So naturally, my first call this morning was to that second candidate, and she is absolutely elated. She's a Cape Coral resident, lives within 5 minutes of the community, works for FGCU. Her name is Mary Mondello, and she will be beginning work on February 10th. So we're very, very happy to have her. And I will be sending an e-blast out in the near future. If not tomorrow, it'll be Monday, repeating pretty much what I said tonight. Next thing I wanted to talk about was kind of an update and then a new facet of it, and that's the ID cards. Please realize that everyone that visits our amenities should have their Sandoval ID card with them. I mean, the whole reason behind putting a picture on the ID card was for identification, and everyone that uses amenities are susceptible to being asked, if you're a resident, and the demeanor of the guards are very pleasant, chit-chat with you, and just, oh, by the way, do you have your ID card? Generally speaking, it's not a proactive measure, meaning if we have 10, 15 people in an amenity, not all 10, 15 people are going to be asked. Usually, if there's any potential issues coming about as perceived by security, then that's when he would ask. So I just don't want everybody to think security is going to be coming up to everybody and asking for ID. That's not the environment we want, and that's not what we're going to do. But what promulgated that, I think everybody who's followed the board meeting in the last couple of months realizes that we had an issue on the basketball court with older teens and young adults. And specifically, they were, Sandoval out there on the dark web or wherever was known as a great place to play basketball, high-level backyard basketball players were coming here, and that made a lot of trespassers come in from outside, and they generally gained access through having a resident put them on the guest list. That's the next thing I want to remind you, is to please check your guest list and make sure you know everybody that's on that guest list, and it's not dated. I mean, some of these kids got put on the guest list from their friends when they were in junior high, and they're 19, 20 years old now. So please do that, and that will help us. We do have that under control. It's been about 3 weeks since we've had our last major incident. Man, I say major: cussing, a little bit of beer drinking. We smelled some marijuana, loud music, cussing, that type of thing. So we have essentially stopped that. And how we did it was a combination of talks with Cape Coral Police Department and resource officers, and predominantly the way we stopped it was changing our security and basically putting them out there at the court during hours we knew that they were going to come. So for the first 5 or 6 days, they started coming back, realizing they were turned away immediately, and it's pretty commonsensical that these guys get tired of that, so they find somewhere else to play. So, and we're not giving up. We're not going to lighten up on that. We're going to make sure we've stamped that out. So that's continuing. But what arose, and it really hit us hard on the Martin Luther King Day, the last day off just a few days ago, we're having some repeated issues with middle school age kids, boys, going in the boys' room and not, you could call it vandalism. It's not a lot of money damage, but they're basically wadding paper towels, throwing them against the mirror, throwing them against the wall, putting toilet paper in the toilets, putting paper towels in the toilets. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is I really encourage any of you, if you walk in the bathroom and you see any suspicious behavior, people are seeing this, please report it to us, and we will immediately take care of it. So I just wanted to put that alert out there for you guys to help us look out for that. Next thing is the RFP process. I want to really give a shout out to our landscape chairperson, Allison Johnson, who did a fabulous job with the RFP. Countless hours. We would have had to have paid someone tens of thousands of dollars to do that job for us. So I cannot thank her enough. We had the pre-bid meeting this week, and we expect bids coming back on February 10th. And this particular contract will begin on April 1. It's for the common areas. It is not for residential. It is the Crawford contract for common area. And I want to emphasize, too, that we're not necessarily dissatisfied with Crawford. They've done a really good job for us from all accounts. Everybody I've spoken to who have been here a number of years, there's a stark difference. We're not there yet, but there's a stark difference in what it looked like 3 or 4 years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, as to what it looked like since they've come on board. But that being one of the largest contracts of the association, the board, through its fiduciary responsibility, felt it prudent to bid that contract out. And I'll give more updates as that process goes on and as a contractor selected. Also want to give primarily this is for the board, a heads up that I'm looking at resurfacing the tennis courts and the basketball court, and it has already been identified that we have a significant root problem around both courts that's making the courts crack. And we can resurface all day long and throw our money, but it's going to come back if we don't take care of it. And the reason I'm bringing that to the board's attention is because that will likely make that number go higher than what's in the reserve study. So not only are we looking at potentially having to remove roots, we're also potentially looking at having a method of protecting it, a barrier in place so they don't continue to grow. We don't want to take out the trees and the landscaping. So anyway, I expect that final proposal, we probably will have a little bit more information on it in February's board meeting, but I anticipate March's board meeting having something in front of the board to consider. And then next, gate access update. And really, I've ad nauseum gone on. I did a really long article. I've talked here a lot about it. But there is something that's come up, and Don Wells brought it to my attention, and it is a really, really good idea, and I'm pursuing it. And that is, everybody knows the tollway tags. Anybody ever seen someone that not work? I never have, and I've been using them for 20 years. That system is a high-cost commercial system. In fact, when I called in Vera and asked them about it, they said, yes, Jerry, we can do it, and they are almost foolproof, but it's going to cost money. And so I think I don't know what a reason, I think they're about $1,500, and so I was expecting to hear about $10,000 or more for these. Well, they're $5,000. And I almost fell out of my chair happy, thinking this is one of the biggest problems we have. Out of all the issues we have with gates, I think the number one frustration is your reader not catching the gate, and you can't get out or in. Or excuse me, I should say in. So what we think we're going to do is we're looking at right now at $30,000. Maybe I can get them cheaper. Maybe we're looking at $25,000 when we buy them in bulk. So that's one problem, because we don't have money, right? We need to find a way to fund these. Then the other issue was, but the big issue was that these readers are not compatible with our tags. We have 6,000 cars and the tags are $25. I mean, that's close to $100,000. Well, to offset that, what I hope can happen is that we can put both systems in at the same time, keep the current system we have now, maybe even if it has to be on the other side, put the easy tag or the tollway reader there. And then that way, we don't have to buy all the tags in advance. We can buy what we think we're going to be able to sell in a year. And if you as homeowners aren't having success and want to purchase a new tag, I predict it'll be the same, around the same fee that we charge now, $25, it would be your choice. And that way, that's the way we could finance the tags and still make it all work. We're in discussions with that, but the primary reason that I wanted to bring it up is, number one, I think it's a really good idea, and number two, I wanted you guys to know that we are continually looking at ways and trying to be creative on how to solve this problem. Last thing that I have is want to let you guys know the board's involvement in Pope Management's evaluation process. It's evaluation season right now for management staff, and the way we're going to proceed is my boss is going to meet with first the board's going to meet and come up with one evaluation for all the employees. Then they'll have those evaluations for each employee. Then my boss, Debbie Hartman, is going to meet with the board and go over my evaluation with them, and she will use that input to evaluate me. Then next, I will meet with the board, and I'll have my evaluation, and they will have one as well for each staff member, and I will use their input to evaluate my staff. So the main message there is your board is engaged and involved with employee matters in that regard. And that's all I have, but Molly Knotts has an announcement to make, so I would turn it over to Molly.
Thank you, Jerry. I asked both Don and Jerry for a couple minutes of time before the board and the community to let all of you know of a decision that I have made concerning continuing to be a board member. First, I want to thank the Sandoval community for having the confidence in my abilities to elect me to a board position for the past 2 terms. I have taken my position on the board very seriously. The decisions that I make as a member of this board have been made after much investigation into every issue that is presented before us. I have always felt that the position that I held was one that required me to be fully vested into all aspects of the Sandoval community. A board position is a full-time commitment. It is a full-time job. 1 month from today, my husband Ray turns 93 years old. His health has declined to the point that I cannot continue to divide my time between a board position and his needs. In the past year, he has had 207 medical appointments, of which I am an integral part. Family must come first. For that reason, I will not be running for re-election for a Sandoval board position. Again, I want to thank you for your confidence in me. I hope that I can continue to serve our community, but in a much less demanding position. Thank you all.
We thank you, Molly, and we would acknowledge and appreciate everything you've done. Thanks.
That does not mean I'm not going to finish my term. I will be finishing my term, but I will not be running again.
Okay. The next item on the agenda are ad hoc committee reports, and the first one's clubhouse improvement. And did we want Melanie to say a few words regarding the survey? Ad hoc, off the cuff? Well, we've sent this out. I think that everyone's interested.
And I'm way too short to be able to. So for those of you that have filled out the survey, really appreciate it. A couple of weeks ago, we were meeting with the architect, and we cut it off at about 40% so that we could gather the data and analyze it before we passed it over. We're probably closer to about maybe 50% of the community has responded at this point. It's a pretty painstaking process to go through and make sure that only one entry for each street address is being counted. But we didn't want to limit it or anything like that. So please continue to submit. If you have an extra idea of anything that you didn't think of initially on your survey, just send an email and then I can add it back into those. But we are getting lots of really great feedback, and we'll be able to take all of that information and start to kind of map it out and figure out what themes and what's the general idea and the direction we want to go in. There's some stuff that we can definitely accommodate in anything, like we could use these activities and this suggestions in the space we have. So we want to be able to identify what's actually going to require construction thoughts versus after it's built, how we'll utilize the space. But just if anybody hasn't filled out the survey, please do. A lot of great information coming in.
Thanks, Melanie. And
Okay, I can add a couple things. First off, thank you, Melanie. She spent a lot of time to make sure that the information that was received was reliable, and thank you for your efforts with that. Our Clubhouse Improvement Committee has met multiple times this past month. Our focus is still to get the necessary information to better understand our demographics and the community needs. We've met with a possible architect as a committee to convey some basic needs and establish a proposed footprint. We have not hired an architect, but we are currently evaluating a proposed contract for the hiring of an architect. Our committee expects to meet again in the next week, and our next meeting with an architect is February 12th. And we'll keep you updated. Thank you.
okay, thank you both. Taylor Morrison litigation.
The committee, our Taylor Morrison Litigation Committee met most recently on January 22nd. We continue to evaluate the progress of our claims, including the Phase 3 transition items. This includes out-of-pocket expenses associated with the Pine Island Gate. Our committee will be meeting with our counsel on January 27th to evaluate their progress to date, and we'll have a significant update in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the capital improvements project, and I would like to take the liberty to explain the parking lot project and then have Al and Scott and Linda add anything that I've not covered. We started this project by the board approving, authorizing Avalon Engineering to draw up engineering plans for the project. And they did that for both the tennis court area and the dog park area. They then submitted the permit to the city, and we've covered that fee. And just recently, that permit came back approved, and we then had some preliminary bidding of what we thought the project was going to cost. But with that, there's always surprises, and I want to explain to you what they are, and why the price is a little bit different than what it was when we first talked. So at one of our clubhouse improvement meetings, Mark Stevens, our construction manager, said that he would be willing to have his company do the bidding for the asphalt companies. And we sent him the preliminary bids that we had received already, and his team sent this out for bid and came back with bids for each one, and that's what I alluded to. This is a chart, the spreadsheet, and it's got all these scopes of services and things that none of us would have ever thought to have on this. So we have a professional job here. He then, at our last meeting, handed me this flow chart, and he also handed me every one of the proposals from all these 5 companies. Al Roper took this chart, and he then had contacted the companies and found out that we couldn't talk to them because they were bid to Stevens Construction. So we talked with them, and the actual person that does the bidding, a fellow by the name of Nick, very helpful, very engaging. Contacted each one of these companies and told them that we would be calling them separately from them, and Al has been working on this nonstop since we got this chart. When you look at it, there are things that are on here that sometimes there's overlap. One covers one thing, one covers another. The thing that was omitted when we did our initial bidding on this project was at the tennis courts, there's a big drain system that goes underneath that particular bit of property. So that's going to have some alterations. So that has added really the significant change in the bid price. So with that information, I prepared a packet for all the board members of all the proposals that we have here. So these aren't just numbers, but they're all backed up with the actual proposals in this packet. Avalon Engineering, they estimated their cost would be $18,500, of which we approved. To date, we've spent $12,500 with them, and what is left in the project is the supervision of the construction phase of the project. So that means even though we've got the plans, we've got the vendor, we still have an oversight mechanism to make sure the job's done right. When we were talking to Stevens Construction, something that we hadn't thought about, he said it's imperative that you do density testing, and that means when they put the underlayment down and the stones that it is of the proper density, so that when you put the asphalt on top of it, it doesn't sink and deteriorate, and so that added an estimate of about another $1,500. We've talked to some of the companies, and they felt that was a reasonable number to use. Linda Moody has been chasing fence companies around the dog park, and we were able to get 2 bids for that. One is Tropical Fence, which is a company that we use to do Calypso Park, and another one is the company that's currently doing our Verdmont Wall. And so it looks like, including the permitting for the fencing, that would be about a $6,700 item. Permitting with the city, there was the application that went in with the plans, and then the approval permit. When the vendor goes to do the work, we will owe them money on each one of those projects. So the total permitting costs are about $1,500. Then we have to remove one of the trees here by the tennis court, and a couple of 3-4 trees over by the dog park. and we have an estimate for the big oak tree, and I'm estimating that that would be a maximum of $1,500. Then landscaping and irrigation replacement was a bid that was provided us from Juniper, and that's one of the companies that actually did come to observe the community. They do big work and big projects. So their bid was $7,200, but just to be safe, I raised that to $85. So I didn't want. So I've come up with a maximum number here of about $139,000 it will cost for these two parks. And I think that number is the top number, and I think with Al working with the vendors that there's a little bit of leeway to lower that, and I think that the landscaping might be a little high, but I think you have to have a number that you want to put in if we're going to go ahead with this project. So with that information, I open that to the board members for questions or discussion, which Al might be able to add and which Linda might be able to add because they've worked with vendors directly. Questions for them? Comments you'd like to make?
I'd just like to make a comment. When we thought when we were going to put down a parking lot, that you just level it out, put some base material in, and pour some asphalt. And that's basically what we can do out at the dog park. Because other than a few little irrigation lines out there, there's nothing major out there. However, over here by the tennis courts, there's a major drain system underneath that grassy area where we're going to put the parking lot. And actually that collects all the water and then shoots it underneath the road into the clubhouse lake. I don't know why they didn't go the other way to the lake on the other side of the tennis courts. I think that's a lot closer, but anyway, it is what it is. And so they have to dig all that up and modify it so that it's not underneath the parking lot. That increased the cost of that parking lot by about a third.
It's interesting to note that on these bids, some of them are as high as $40,000 for that part of the project, and others are in the 18 range. If you could get piecemeal, one person to do one and then the other person to do the other project, of course, that's not the way it works. So, but Al's working really hard on trying to get accurate numbers for that. So it will not be higher. It would be better, if anything.
Yeah, we're talking 24 parking spaces here by the tennis courts, including one handicap. And at the dog park, there'd be 11 spaces, including one handicap. Now people illegally park in the grass. They tear up the ground. They break the irrigation system that's out there. It's very dangerous. Getting in and out of a car, a pet could jump out into the road and be hit by another car. And there's no handicap parking out there on the road. So this is why, we want to put the parking lot in a safe area.
I've got one question.
Please.
In our budget for the clubhouse improvement funding, we had $50,000 maximum for tennis court parking. That leaves $89,000 in what you're proposing. Are you saying $89,000 will come out of additional capital?
I was under the impression that we agreed that it would be the 50, and then the addition would come out of the telecommunications.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
You're right. So
you're not talking about the additional money being lowered from construction costs for the clubhouse. You're talking about it coming from
yes.
a new source.
Now, in this packet that you have, I'm glad you brought that up because it's an important point. The aeration project that originally was approved by the board was $500,000. So this year, when the new board took over, I thought that would be about $325,000, and in that number, I added $18,000 for the landscaping. Well, that number's way off. It's way lower. So that project and the streetlight project was cheaper than we approved. What we have on our tentative sheet of coming out of the telecommunications fund is going to be about $13,500 less. So that's a savings, on number-wise. We did not spend that. So if that number was extrapolated into this number for this parking, then that means that we would really be $25,000 higher than what we had projected, not the whole thing. So you know, we're still, it's not what we would like to have. I'd like to get it for exactly the same, but you know, taking that into consideration, one of the cost overruns it balances out the other.
And if you also look at it from a contribution standpoint, you're talking 2 or 3 weeks of contributions equivalency for that overrun.
So I wondered, and this is strictly just what the board's feeling is. Do we want to set this as an expectation and an approval for doing the parking lot, so that when Al gets these final bids, that he would have the authority to say, let's go ahead with it? Or do you want to wait until you know what they actually are?
I suggest that we approve no more than $139,134 in hopes that it will be less, but not to be more than that. Just as we pre-approved the fountain, of course, that was a far lesser amount of money, but we pre-approved that in last month's budget, and the actual paperwork for that has come through at this month. But I know that there has been a huge amount of time dedicated to this by numerous people. It has not just been 1 or 2 folks working on this. It has been very wide-reaching. It has been well-researched. The fact that you've been able to utilize Stevens to do a lot of the final work for us without an additional charge is a real plus for us. It's unfortunate that there are things that we don't, as novices, don't always realize as a board member, but that once the real professionals in the field in construction come into the arena, they have shown us that some of these things, i.e. the density testing, and also the fact that there's a big problem of tunneling and shoring up for the irrigation overflow water going into the stormwater system. Those are all unexpected costs, and I personally feel, and I've followed this all along, that this is a very sound figure that we've come up with now with sound testing behind it, and I would certainly go ahead with recommending that we go with this price.
Marilyn?
Yes, Molly, if you will round it off to 140,000 as the top price, because 139,134 rather than, what if it came in at 135? So if you'll round it off at 140,000, then I'll second the motion.
I will move that we spend no more than $140,000 for the Sandoval parking lot projects.
And I second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I cannot support that unless she amends it to say 50,000 of which would come from the clubhouse budget, the balance from other capital funding in the telecommunications fund.
And that's on my sheet here. This
Yeah,
project would be
that's not
funded
her
through.
motion.
Yeah, okay, but I acknowledge what you're saying, and I am in concurrence with that.
Yes.
So let's get this. My first move, and Marilyn's seconding, was to spend no more than
I agree with that.
$140K for
Can I-
this project.
Can I offer?
I will amend to include that we,
That 50,000.
50,000,
No more than 50,000.
no more than 50,000.
No,
I-
50,000, no, it's
How many-
50,000, period. 50,000
50,000
will be deducted from the 1.9 million of clubhouse allocated funds.
That's what's written.
I'd just like to throw in something here also. I'm looking at Juniper's landscaping bid. I know the city doesn't require on a residential end landscaping for fences and things like that. So I would recommend that if the city does not require additional landscaping in those areas, that we do not do those, since we already have existing landscaping around the perimeter of both of those projects.
And that's why I say I think these numbers are maximum numbers, and you're talking about a method to save some money already, and I think we're all in concurrence with that.
Yep.
Appreciate the comment. Any other discussion?
Okay, there is one more piece to this. I will make a second amendment to this to pre-approve a bar authorizing the association to conduct the Barclay Park parking lot and the
Happy
clubhouse.
Paws.
Happy Paws.
Sorry, Molly, set you up for failure there.
You did, you set me up. The dog park parking lot and the clubhouse parking lot. So now I will go back through and read all of this
Now,
for,
do we need a bar for, this isn't a reserve item.
No, it's not a reserve item.
Telecommunications,
It's telecommunications.
very good.
Doesn't need a bar. Unless
I
you're,
thought-
unless you're new finance,
I thought bars were strictly for.
well, they are. Bars are
It's a
strictly
board,
reserved.
it's a board authorization request.
We're treating the telecommunications as a quasi-reserve, but it is not a reserve, so I
Do
don't,
you think it would be a good
I
idea?
don't think it would hurt.
Yeah, I'm thinking moving forward, I think it would be a good idea
Okay.
to have that practice for telecommunications expense.
We'll call it.
Okay, so let's-
then
Bar is
something.
fine,
Do we need to identify the funding source then?
It's
Yes, I did.
telecommunications.
in the bar,
In-
yes.
In the
Yes.
bar.
Yeah, the telecommunications and there's two separate funds in that that it's coming from.
Just as long as it
Yeah.
represents.
okay.
Perfect.
So let's go back to this from the beginning. I move, Marilyn seconds, a motion to spend no more than $140,000 for the two parking lots. One at the dog park in Phase 3, the other one additional parking for the clubhouse. It was amended to include $50,000 deduction from the clubhouse funds. It was a second amendment to authorize a bar authorization, pre-authorization for these funds to come out, for this $50,000 to come out of the telecommunications fund.
Okay.
Do we have that down as everyone is?
And the balance to come out of the telecommunications fund as well.
No, everything's coming out of
Yeah,
there.
but just not of the,
Clubhouse.
The
She said,
clubhouse.
that was a paragraph, that was a sentence up.
oh, okay, okay.
I think it's right.
Okay.
I think it's right.
We will ensure that it is.
Your intention and mine are the same. If it's not right, we'll, once
Well,
see
we
it
have to get
paid,
it
we'll-
right in what we're voting
Well,
on. So
it's
are we-
right. It's right.
Are we in agreement that
Yeah.
this we have verbalized correctly?
Yep.
So you need to call the.
Okay.
the-
Okay. Any other
Do you accept the
discussion?
amendments?
Yes, yes.
She accepts the amendments in her second.
Okay. Other? Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment with the two changes that were approved, signify by raising your hand.
It is a unanimous vote.
Okay. Now, the rest of the Capital Improvement Project Committee report will come from Alan Scott.
Arguing whether who goes first. I've got a couple of projects that I can put to bed. The first one is the lounge chairs out at the pool area. We had 31 lounge chairs that were basically in the scrap heap that we took 10 at a time over to the aluminum welder and had them repaired. We brought them back, puffed them off, and repainted them, so they're back out amongst the rest of the chairs out there. And that project is completely done until we get another 10 broken ones, and then that's basically a pickup load, and we'll haul them back to the welder and until that process doesn't work anymore. We refurbished 31 chairs for a little less than $1,000, and those chairs, a new chair is worth almost $450. So. I think we did pretty good there.
Thank you, Al.
Another project that we can put to bed is the street light project. There's one up by Somerville. There's one at Maleta, one at Kay's Circle, and two across from the kiosk when you're coming in at the new gate. And there's also 2 street lights over here on the curve when you're coming into Anguilla. And that's what actually started it all. I hope everybody likes them. They're basically the same light that we would get if we would get them from LCEC, and but we own them, and we're saving approximately $300 a month by using those. Now we put a lot into them, so it'll take us several years to make that, but they have LED lights in them. I hope people. The only questions that I got is why didn't we continue on down Anguilla on that east side? There's that long straightaway there. Well, we can't. We went as far as we could because LCEC owns those high tension wires that are on the right-hand side there. They won't allow anything at all electrical on that side of the street. When we talked to the residents on the other side, on the lake side of the street there, they didn't want them there because they said it would shine in their windows. So that's why they are what they are. So that's another project put to bed. So that's it.
Anything else?
Fountain, which I believe is covered under a reserve item, so that's basically you covered that.
But you worked on it. If you have comments about it, please.
We actually, as you had stated, we had moved the power source from the existing backyard into an area that's less conspicuous. So I think it's going to benefit the residents who live there. Again, when we did this, as you had mentioned, we bid it as a whole thing, not necessarily the pump. So the pump that we are getting now has a 4-year life expectancy to it, which is going to be covered under warranty, and we were going through pumps every year and a half. So what we put in reserves towards that pump replacement, we're going to see a substantial savings on just that pump and having to reserve for that pump. Also, we switched from a incandescent light to a halogen light system, which is also going to save us in electricity. So the substantial savings that we're probably going to see is going to be in excess of $300 to $400 a month. It's LED, yeah, from
halogen to
LED. And as the president had alluded to before, these are component specific, so we don't have to replace everything like we did before. We're going to be able to replace a specific component, and we do have those existing warranties. So I'm excited for the folks who live on that lake and the people who are going to be coming into Trafalgar. I believe it's going to be a community-wide enjoyment. So I think between the savings and the enjoyment we're going to see from that new fountain, it's going to be a benefit to the community. So thanks for everyone's patience. As most board members who have tried to get vendors to respond to them, it is not as you could imagine. It's like pulling teeth from a chicken. It's really difficult. So we've accomplished this and we're moving forward. So
thank you. You have a comment on the sunshade?
Comment on the sunshade. We had a little bit of a delay. It was only a few days because in the best interest of the community and your money that you spend, we wanted to make sure that the Clubhouse Expansion Committee in their latest meeting with the architect and the vendors that anything that they had did was not going to impede on our placement of the sunshade. So that has all been alleviated, and I believe we are looking for a February 12th install date for the sunshade.
No, a February 12th confirmation that there is no conflict.
That there is no so February 12th, no conflict, and then we're going to have to schedule with the vendor again to get that aligned with their installers. But again, to do that, it did delay the process. But again, to put that up and then have a conflict with the new proposed clubhouse would do a disservice to the residents. So we appreciate you guys bearing with us to make sure that both projects don't conflict with each other.
Thank you.
Scott, isn't it true that the sunshade has been...
It's here.
It's been fabricated. It exists. It's not just an idea anymore. It's there.
Correct. We are ready to go. We just need the installer to come up with a new date since we had pushed it off, and they are accommodating us in that respect.
Okay.
All righty. Electronic voting report.
We blew past our original goal of 300 residents. sign up for electronic voting and opting into receiving all communication electronically. I'm pleased to report it looks like that our new goal of 500 residents will be met. Our committee continues to meet every Friday at 9 a.m. If anyone has any specific questions, please feel free to stop by the office at that time or any time when staff is there, or reach out to me. Our committee continues to test the system in anticipation of our March election. That is going very, very well. I'm very pleased with the progress, and we encourage anyone that has not signed up for electronic voting to please do so. Express any hesitations that you have, and we'll address any questions. We have a 1-800 number. We have a YouTube video, and we will be having a computer set up during election time for people to be able to come in and vote electronically. It's not only a significant cost savings, it's just ease of use and also increased security. Again, I would just reiterate any questions. Please feel free to reach out, and every Friday at 9 a.m. we do meet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. We're going to move on to the old business and address the noise enforcement policy.
For the benefit of people who might not have been at the last couple of board meetings, the Homeowners Association occasionally receives communication from residents related to loud noises, as we did tonight. These are typically related to barking dogs. However, as we heard tonight, they also include other external noises. The challenge that HOA has is that the complaints are hearsay and relevant to only the person making the complaint, meaning it could be a case where a complaining resident is not being reasonable as an average person would be. However, due to the alleged violation being at night or while staff is away from the office, the HOA does not have the practical way to measure the validity of the complaint. So the enforcement policy I'm recommending is as follows. 1, upon receiving a complaint from a resident regarding a noise issue, the Homeowners Association sends a friendly reminder letter to the alleged violators stating that a noise complaint has been filed against them. The name and address of the complainant remains anonymous. The letter states that the alleged noise as being an annoyance to others, states if the noise is accurate to please refrain from allowing the noise to continue being an annoyance to others, but goes on to say if the noise reported is not accurate to please disregard and thank them in advance for following HOA rules. Number 2, the HOA informs the complainant to notify the HOA again if after 2 weeks the noise continues. 3, the HOA informs the complainant they may also pursue enforcement with City of Cape Coral by calling the non-emergency police number 239-574-3223. The Cape Coral noise ordinance is including on the following page. If after 2 weeks the complainant contacts the Homeowners Association again, stating the noise is continuing, the complainant will be requested to provide the HOA with an affidavit from 2 adjoining neighbors confirming the noise is a nuisance. 5, upon receiving the affidavit from 2 adjoining neighbors confirming the noise as a nuisance, the HOA will send a second letter stating the violation and providing the resident with 10 days to cure the violation or potentially be fined and suspended for their noise nuisance. At this point, the complainant and the witnesses who signed the affidavit are no longer kept confidential as this potentially becomes a legal matter. 6, the HOA informs the complainant to notify the HOA again if after 2 weeks the noise continues. 7, if after the additional 2 weeks the complainant contacts the HOA again stating the noise is continuing, the violator would be brought to the Board of Directors with a recommendation for a fine and a hearing date set as routine protocol for all deed restriction violations at this point in the process. Then miscellaneous. 1, music may not be played in common areas, including amenities, in a manner which can be heard by others. Rather, personal music devices using headphones or earbuds must be used. 2, music may not be played in vehicles loud enough to be heard by others. And that is the policy. So I think the best way to proceed would be having a motion to adopt, a second, and then we can go into discussion.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Is there discussion?
So Marilyn made the motion and Ron seconded? Thank you.
I can just add a personal anecdote to one of the reasons why I wanted to hear the audible music restriction in our common grounds. The last 4 times I visited our amenities, each of those times I dealt with a group of individuals that were playing loud music, with a lot of derogatory terms and expletives. Frankly, I don't want my daughter, my wife, my mother, or my neighbors dealing with that. So I think it's real important that we have a firm established rule just to show respect. Typically, you don't think that you would have to have a rule in place for that, but unfortunately, we do. And I hope the board will support it.
And I agree that we need something in place, because if you talk to the resident, and I wanted to ask the lady about the chimes, but didn't, I just wondered if she'd talked with her neighbor and asked the neighbor to take them down, that would alleviate that problem. But evidently, they must be pretty loud if they're heard 2 houses away. That's probably in excess of what it should be. And so we do need something on our books to address problems.
I would like to, am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Okay. I would like to question, though, what happens when we have a function at the pool with music?
Well, there's music going on all day at the pool and in the clubhouse, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
I think there's a clear distinction between residents taking liberties to choose their type of music rather than the management choosing music. I think that's a pretty clear line.
Oh,
Well, I agree, but I just want to make sure that we have that as an exception here, and a time limit cutoff for, say, we have a band out around the pool deck for a function, or there's a wedding reception and they use a band that can be heard outside. Those are things we have to take into consideration. I know when we did our daughter's wedding at Fort Myers Beach, there was a 10 o'clock cutoff of noise ordinance at that time. I don't know what it is now. Marilyn, could you tell us what the cutoff is for the city of Cape Coral?
I don't know the beach, but I do know the city cutoff time is 10 o'clock. And most of the complaints have just been against one particular restaurant bar, and they have outside. And so they have to move inside if they're going to play after 10 o'clock. However, one of the council members have decided to try and make the noise ordinance less than what it is. That she's talking to the city attorney, and she's going to bring an ordinance back to try to accommodate this particular restaurant. I don't have the feeling that it's going to pass, but of course you can't talk to fellow council members, so I don't know what's going to happen until it comes forward.
Okay.
I will say that when there's a special event, then the music can go later, and I think it's mostly at Sunsplash, but there could be other venues, but it takes a special exception, and they have to go through Parks and Rec and follow all the rules for the one-time special exception to go later.
Could add, unless specifically approved in writing by Sandoval management, and that should cover everything.
Yeah, that should cover it.
Or special event at Clubhouse sponsored.
Approved in writing.
Yep.
So we want to add that to the policy that was read.
Correct.
I think that just my opinion is, in not to say that the concerns that are out there about wind chimes and other noises are not valid. I think without, and I've been watching this city with that restaurant and seeing what they're trying to do to accomplish, a positive outcome for the residents across the street. Without us attaching some sort of quantitative number like the city does in decibels, 65 after a certain, we are leaving ourselves up to a possible either lawsuit or something, because what I feel, and I'm just using it as an example, not saying it's my opinion, but if I feel that wind chimes are pleasant and somebody else doesn't, without having a quantitative number of decibels or whatever attached to that, my bedroom might be next to someone's air conditioning unit that I find offensive, that runs 24 hours a day in the summertime. So do I make them turn that off and write a violation? So unless we have some sort of numbers and teeth into that, I think it's too ambiguous to just say what may be offensive to someone. And and that's where I have the problem, because you might like wind chimes, they might not. I might not like your pool pump making the noise.
Or the bird.
Or as we all live, those of us who live on lakes, we know that voices carry. So we might be having a conversation at 10 o'clock at night with family and friends, but across the lake, you can hear us just like you were next to us. So there really needs to be some sort of a number that we can assign to that to say you are in violation of this number, not in violation of what I interpret as offensive.
I'm sorry, I was speaking with someone else. How would you propose getting that number? Who would be responsible?
Well, again, we talk about home rule with the city and things like that, and I think if we came up and mirrored possibly the city's decibel ordinance, I think that would probably be something that would be a little bit more enforceable.
Well, the issue with that would be the HOA would defeat the purpose of having the 3 people with the affidavit, because when I can't come out in the middle of the night and use a device.
Right, but the complaint could be made to the city because.
Oh, sure.
Right.
If they've got an iPhone, they can measure the decibels on their iPhone.
I might add that I don't think the wind chime and I don't
No,
think
they had to
the
recalibrate
bird
it.
beats your
Sandoval
decibel level, but it's a continuous monotonous noise, which is an entirely different thing than how loud it is. So exactly. Right. So I don't know that if you say 65 decibels, I think you'll exclude each one of these complaints that we had.
Well, some of these are nuisance complaints, not as much.
The point is that is interpretive, it's not quantitative. You can interpret what you find is offensive, and if you get enough people to agree with you, that doesn't mean anything. I could find your political views offensive, but that doesn't mean you can't express those.
I find your voice offensive,
Jerry?
and I know I can find 2 people out here that agree with me.
Exactly, correct.
Shut up. No.
If there is a violation, will it go, will the resident be entitled to a hearing?
Yes, and that's
So
what.
the corroboration would be 3 residents to establish a violation,
And
then
5.
subsequent,
5 members.
and then subsequent to that, they'll be entitled to a hearing. So now we're in the aggregate, we're talking about 8 people. I'm sympathetic to weaponizing our HOA rules against individuals, but frankly, 8 seems like we have a significant number of residents involved here.
Quite honestly, through experience with this exact policy, I've found that the complaints go down. And because what happens as an effect of this policy is you see the real problems are the ones that come forward. Because it takes a process. It puts the onus on the owner to do some work rather than the owner just calling up and letting the HOA handle it. So again, it's my experience that the only violations we end up enforcing are real
Flagrant
issues.
ones?
That's what my experience is. So.
Dagnabbit, I can't support this unless you make 2 changes to the miscellaneous section. Music may not be played in common areas, including amenities, in a manner in which can be heard by others. You got to take music down. I would say, if you say music may not be played by an individual in common areas, I can support that.
I think Ron
Music may not be
We've
played-
got language
Hold
to
on,
cover
hold
your
on.
concerns on that
Music
one.
may not be played in vehicles loud enough. If you say music may not be played by an individual in a vehicle, I think we've got to cover what, for the Veterans Day get together.
That's
they
a
couldn't have
special
music.
event, though.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we're covering
the
that in
proposed
language.
language was unless approved in writing by Sandoval management.
I think
I
that
still
we
would like
need a
to see
bit
individuals in
more
the verbiage.
in the way of workshop to come up with the correct verbiage on this. I see that there are several entities coming from different board members that are going to play into this. I think it can be solved in a very simple manner, but it needs to be ironed out a bit more. And I think it may take till another month to be able to get this verbiage down correctly.
Well, if we can't approve the entire noise violation policy, I would ask that we approve a portion of it,
I
because
agree.
we have a real issue when it comes to audible music
I
being
agree.
played on our common grounds. And I'm confident that I can address everyone's concerns and making sure we articulate the language in a way that meets everybody's concerns up here.
If you add the terms individual to the 2 miscellaneous functions, I'm happy with it.
Individuals,
What if you got 2 people? That's not
They are
individual.
2 individuals. They're not.
maybe explain to me how the verbiage, unless approved in writing by Sandoval management, doesn't address the concerns.
Is Sandoval management going to approve absolutely everything that anybody might want to? If the bocce ball guys want to have a radio going, is Sandoval management going to
They would have
approve
to,
that?
they would have to request approval in writing,
Unless
get it
there's a
signed off
complaint,
by
it
our
won't make any
management team.
difference.
And unless they do that, it is a violation.
So the Veterans Day celebration would have within.
Approved in writing by Sandoval management.
And I don't think
Okay.
it's going to come to anyone's attention if
Give
no
me
one
that
complains about it.
That's true. Okay. I'm good.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, so are we to a point that we want to vote?
Hold on. Okay, would you like for me to read this back to you?
Well, it's just
Marilyn
voting on what's
moved to adopt the noise ordinance. Ron seconded the motion. Discussion by Ron, Maryland, and every board member. Amendment added unless approved in writing by Sandoval management added to
which item?
the policy.
I would say the policy.
To the policy. Okay.
Actually, specifically to music in the common grounds. I don't want
To
to
the
create
miscellaneous section.
the
of the
mis-
policy.
the
What number is
misperception that we could have
It's
a
miscellaneous.
individual resident approved rather than a
To the
music in the common
miscellaneous
grounds.
section of the
Yes.
policy.
Perfect.
Okay, are we ready for a vote? All those in favor of the policy as amended, please signify by raising your hand.
I can do,
Those opposed?
okay. There is only one opposition, and that would be Scott.
Okay, the next item is the bar for the lake fountain, and this is basically just clarifying formally in writing what we tentatively approved, that the reserve study has a replacement value of $6,000 every 2 years, so the 2019 replacement and the 2021 being combined will cover what it's going to cost here with a 4-year warranty, so we shouldn't have to have the second replacement, and then going forward, hope that that will work out quite well. So the clubhouse fountain not to exceed $13,000. We have got proposals that are $10,698,000 plus tax, and there's a small contingency, and I really think the project will come in very close to the $10,698 unless we need a little sod in the area with the aeration. The lakes will take care of that, so I don't think you'll need it for the fountain. So is there any question or any problems with approving that? Do we need another motion, or is that just?
There's going to be no maintenance agreement with that then?
No, are you going to have a maintenance agreement for the fountain?
We do not have one.
Do we need one?
Do we need one?
And
I'll
that
bring
wouldn't be in
yeah.
this bar, but it's just something going forward. Do you need?
Scott, would you like to comment on that?
We currently do not, or we did not have a maintenance agreement on the existing fountain, and it was a pay-as-we-go.
But we
when it-
had one, but it was canceled when the vendor switch came.
Correct,
So,
yes.
so I think we need advice from the vendor as if we do need one and what the price would be.
I'll call Chris
Thank you.
and see what he
And
recommends.
that would
for-
not affect this, because that would be in your operations of your.
Correct.
Not in a reserve bar. Okay, all in favor, do we have a?
Hold on. Do we need to have, since this is
We
a-
voted for this
we
already.
voted- We
But what
voted
we
on this the
voted
last
to do
time.
was pre-authorize a bar. What we're doing now is affirming.
Okay, so then let's
So
have
it's a bar
we need a
affirmation.
motion to approve this bar.
I'll move.
Okay, second? Okay, any further discussion other than the maintenance, and that, which will not be in the bar? Okay,
Okay,
all in
Marilyn
favor?
moved, Scott was the second.
All in favor, signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Okay,
I will read this back. The bar to affirm not to exceed $13,000 for fountain replacement project. Marilyn moved, Scott seconded. All members voted unanimously.
okay. The next item on the agenda is the ARC committee appointment.
On August 19th, 2019, Grady Stevens resigned from the ARC committee due to personal conflicts with weekday meeting times of the committee. On October 24th, 2019, the board appointed Chris Bechtel to take Grady Stevens' place on the committee. On January 15th, 2020, Chris Bechtel resigned from the ARC committee. Even though it was a short time, I'd like to thank her for serving. After Chris Bechtel's resignation, ARC chairperson Carol Torello contacted Grady Stevens and inquired if he would be available to attend Saturday committee meetings. He confirmed he could. Subsequently, the ARC made a decision to meet on Saturdays and recommend to the board of directors to reappoint Grady Stevens to the committee. And as such, I recommend the board make a motion reappointing Grady Stevens to the ARC
I so
committee.
move.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, any discussion? All in favor of Grady returning to the ARC, signify by raising your hand.
Welcome back.
Thank you for coming back again, Grady.
Okay, so now items 12, 13, and 14 are all related to the ARC, and I assume Carol...
Just a second. Nope, not yet. So we're going to go through it. So the way we're going to handle this is I'm going to introduce the motion. We'll get a motion. We'll get a second. Then during discussion, Carol will be available to answer any questions
Okay.
that you may have. So
You're going to do the recommending, the committee's not?
I'm going to recommend the motion. We're going to get a second. And then if there's any question on the motion, Carol is here to answer any questions.
I'd kind of like the committee to make a recommendation, and then the board would either approve or not approve. Therefore, we're not involved in the decision-making. What do you think? I mean, that's kind of how we've been either way, I guess. Just, if you're speaking for them, then I'm comfortable with you doing it your way.
Yeah,
but
so
but
for the audience,
we are not making the recommendation. They are, and we're approving or disapproving.
So for the audience's knowledge, I put in the board pack for the board to view the recommendation from the ARC committee. So they have had an opportunity to review that. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the motion. We'll get a second. And then if there may not be questions, but if there are, Carol is here to help answer. So the committee will be requesting the board make a motion to adopt 4 bullet points on Exhibit A in both red and green. And this is related to fencing. The first recommendation is add to the guideline, fences are to be constructed of bronze powder-coated aluminum picket, invisible picket, with a 5-foot gate on the side. Second recommendation on fencing, add to the guideline after 3-gallon plant material, in that order, plant material to be installed on 3-foot centers. Number 3, remove from the guideline black vinyl coated chain link. Number 4, revise in the guideline at the point after the point where fences must be located in side or rear yards only, starting at the back corner of the home, and then say, and extend from the rear of the resident towards the side property line if compliant with the side setback requirement, and then towards the rear of the property. And that might be a little confusing for you guys.
I have
but
one
again,
question.
yes.
Hold on, we have to make it. I so move.
Thank you.
Okay, second?
Scott.
Scott?
Second.
Okay. Motion and second, discussion.
In terms of the approved fences that do not meet those requirements, are they going to be grandfathered in?
Yes.
I think that should be in this.
It's already a requirement. We wouldn't need to include it. It's an actual covenant that we must do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. It's important that
But
they...
approved fences that...
Yeah,
That is correct.
going forward.
And Ron just made a very good point. I want to make sure everybody heard that. He used the word approved fences. So if we go to a home that is not in compliant, we find out they never applied for it, they're susceptible to having to comply with the new rule.
And I have a question regarding the 3-gallon plants on 3-foot centers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that always our standard?
It
Carol.
was the standard, it was not written.
Standard, but it was not written.
Okay, any more discussion on fences? Okay, so as we now need to vote if we want to approve this new recommendation for fences going forward, so the community will be unified in the type of fences that are going to be approved. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we have a new fence document for the ARC to work with.
Next item is the house color, exterior house colors.
Flower pots.
Flower pots.
This was brought up in the discussion in the beginning.
And I would like to.
And this is to the board, you'll find the committee recommendation of flower pots on the last page of their report under the heading comments on Exhibit 2 in green. The committee will be requesting the board make a motion to adopt the one bullet point recommendation as presented. And that one bullet point is add to the guideline allowing 5 flower pots that are designed and constructed for plant use. They must contain healthy, well-maintained living plants that are not on the forbidden plant list. They may be in front or side yard and should not interfere with lawn maintenance.
Okay.
I so move.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, discussion.
Yes, under discussion, I wanted to share that I did have a concern, as did this lady that spoke earlier, but I felt like 5 is a pretty fair number. And that doesn't include what artifacts somebody may have in their yard. It just refers to flower pots. And each month, I'm part of an organization that has a brunch at the Cape Royal Clubhouse. So, and it just happened to be this last Saturday. So I counted the number of different things that people had in their yard, and for each of the houses that we passed, and mind you, it was only one street, but the most was 7 and the least was 0. But I would say on average there were 3 or 4 per house. Now, not significant, and it's certainly not scientific, but those houses, that community has beautiful homes. And so I felt like when I read this that it was fair. And again, I like the idea that before a hurricane, or when there's a hurricane alert, that Jerry sends out an email and tells everybody to take everything that is movable and put it in their garage so that it doesn't become a missile. So with that, I can support this.
Also, I think the number currently is 0 that you're allowed, so I think we're
Yeah.
greatly expanding the ability to add flowers.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I received a violation in 2005 or 6 when we first moved on to Sunvale for having a flower pot by the front door, 1 flower pot. So this is an expansion of what the rights are.
I think it's
we have
given,
a
it's an individual
Yes, it's right here.
identification opportunity, and I think it's a good thing.
Shape.
Carol, they are asking, was there a definition of height, width, shape? And your committee recommended that it could be any height, width, or shape. There was no size restraint.
Okay, so can you tell me what the difference between a flower pot and a planter is? I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
No, I think that's a good question.
I mean, can my flower pot be this tall? And I can have 5 of them in my front yard. Okay.
And I would just dovetail on that with Al, is coming from the landscape industry, and you just, as people could tell before, I'm a stickler for numbers, right? So, I've installed many flower pots that were 48 inches tall and maybe held an aggregate of 80-gallon pot. So if you do have 5 of those in your driveway, so again, I think we really need to get down to a little bit more specifics and come to a size of which that 5, and I don't think that's a bad number, but a size of a flower pot would be not to exceed.
I agree with that.
My thought is, part of this says it can't interfere with your lawn being mowed. So consequently, if somebody wants, I can't imagine that somebody's going to want 5 flower pots in their landscaped area, but they can't interfere with the lawn being mowed, and I think that's significant.
Did your committee discuss a maximum size at any point?
Yes, we did. We looked at it, we thought from every angle, and we thought that some of the homes have some beautiful, they may have 1 of those very large pots that you're talking about. Other homes may have an arrangement of 4 or 5 of the smaller pots, beautiful, 5 of
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
You know, here's the other thing to consider, because now I'm seeing your point, is that the ARC committee has we still need to be applied for. And the ARC committee
do?
has the ability
have to
to
apply for a
rule
flower pot?
based on aesthetics.
No, I don't think
Do
you have
these
to apply
pots-
for a flower pot.
So
You do not have to apply.
you put a huge pot, and you're saying you do not,
Yeah.
The only reason is again, not that anybody would do that, put 5 100-gallon pots in their driveway, but for the person who wants to, they would say it meets the guidelines of ARC. And it might not be aesthetically pleasing. So if we attach a number to it,
I
there
don't
would
think
be
it's in
no
the- I don't think it
ambiguity
is
and
in
say,
the
listen,
application.
5
My
not to
mom says it
exceed
is.
50 gallons in total volume.
I move that we table this and send it back to the ARC to bring back to us with that added to their recommendation.
Well, you could do that, or you could, as a board, you can just say, we will take your recommendation and add one more sentence, not to exceed X number of gallons, and then you don't have to go through another month of waiting.
I'm not competent to say what number X is, though. Is someone on this, or can you tell us what X is?
Well, I could tell you, for most of you folks out in the audience, if you're going to go out and buy a fruit tree of decent size, that black tub that you get it in is approximately 30 gallons, and that's a substantial size, a pot in your yard. And then 30 gallons could be whether it's more round than tall, but I would think something in that 30 to 40 gallon size would be something that wouldn't be obtrusive and annoying to people. I think that was something that would be aesthetically pleasing, especially as you guys looked into. Some of these pots can cost into hundreds and hundreds of dollars if they're kiln fired and things like that. So I think a 30 or 40 gallon might be something that I, as a board member and a resident, could live with in size.
I withdraw my motion then.
Carol, do you have
Withdraw my motion.
any
Do that.
opinion on that size?
I think that's a good idea, let the board decide on that total thing. I mean, Scott has that background and knows, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I grew up in Philadelphia, we didn't have any 50-gallon flower pots on the front steps.
I think one of the other things that the committee worked very diligently with was the fact that there would never been an ordinance about flower pots. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And we were not going to, they, not we, but I just was sitting in on all of their meetings. They were not going to restrict having the description of what a flower pot should look like, as long as it contains living, well-maintained plants.
Well, that's
Because there are some beautiful things, and that is in the portion. And the other thing is, if you are having a violation officer look at this, the violation officer, if you are now having 22 pots in your yard, or you're having 3 pots in your yard, they can't go with a ruler onto your property and say, it says a 6-inch pot and this is 6.5. That's what they took into consideration also, was the size in that respect. But I can certainly see your point, and we could put a maximum of no more than 30 or 40 gallons.
Are you comfortable amending the guidelines to 40 gallon currently, or do you?
I'm comfortable in 40 gallons, but again, I would defer to the conversation that you folks have, and I don't want to be contrary to what the talks that you've had as size and things. I mean, if we could all, as your committee tasked with that and the board, come up with an idea, and then I think I would be more than comfortable saying that a 40 gallon, 5 not to exceed 40 gallons each.
So we're not talking height or width?
Correct, just volume.
Volume.
That was one of the things that we considered too, because you have some of this very attractive, tall, small,
I don't think you'll ever get compliance.
And the good thing is you will notice, like you're saying, a flower pot, as we all consider, and something that's really 100-gallon. As we know, there are some in the development that have probably ones that are half the size of this table in their areas, so they wouldn't meet that standard. And again, do we really want 5 of those, which is more of a commercial look than it is a residential look?
But Scott, is a 40-gallon more of a landscaping issue than just a decorative? I thought this was for decorations, not for maintaining landscaping in that pot. Am I incorrect in that?
No,
I think the
it has to
volume
have a flower in
limitation
it.
limits your ability to do anything other than
Flowers.
flowers and plants.
40 gallons is pretty big. You can have a tree in that.
Well,
But if I'm wrong, I think you were saying not to exceed 40 gallons.
Correct.
correct.
So how big is the one in your yard?
That's a 20-gallon pot.
Okay,
So
so,
that's
yeah,
half
so
the
that's well
size.
under. I mean, I figured it was.
Yeah.
But would one twice as big as that be
Yeah.
acceptable to you?
It's not objectionable, and if it
No,
was
no,
twice
but-
that size, I don't think it still would be.
Yeah, again, you're talking about something that whether you go high or wide,
Well,
and you're
there's
just
another
talking
one further down
volume
the street
of that. So,
that's a bigger pot, that's across the street from us. And it's bigger than you, it's more in the 30 to 40,
it is.
so.
Okay, I will amend my, here we go again. I will make an amendment to my recommendation of 5 flower pots, guideline not to exceed a maximum of 40 gallons
Per pot?
per pot.
Okay, second to that?
Do you support that as a second?
Okay, any other discussion?
What would a 40-gallon pot weigh if it was filled?
It all depends on the media of the pot. I mean, you can go with a composite
Plastic,
pot,
or is
terracotta
it,
pot, or kiln-fired pot. That 40-gallon pot could weigh,
Not empty, full.
again, depending on the substrate that you're
500
putting in
pounds
there. If you're just
or more.
putting in potting soil in a 40-gallon, a bag of potting soil, 3 cubic feet, you'd need 3 bags of that weighing 20 pounds, approximately 10 pounds each. So you may be talking 40 or 50 pounds just of substrate, and then whatever the planting material. So at the most, you're probably talking 60 or of pounds total of
If it's a
inside
ceramic
that
pot,
pot.
it weighs a couple
Marilyn,
hundred
could you
pounds.
carry a 70-pound pot inside?
Tony and I could.
Okay, so any other, did you had a comment?
What about people who have existing pots that don't meet those specs?
Well,
I
are
think
Well,
we're
the
setting the
question is
guideline.
whether you have to apply for them or not. We said no, Jerry says yes.
So let me explain that, because Don made a good point.
I don't
and
think
it's
you'll
kinda-
ever get, why would someone want to pay $25 to get a pot put in their yard? I just don't, I don't.
They're not.
No.
So that's why I wanted to explain. So typically under these type of items, 99% of the people won't apply, and 99% of the people would not be approached. The only time when we do our drives, we're looking for things that are non-compliant. What this would protect us against is someone putting in a huge planter, pink, with something written on it, or something like this. And for them to say, oh no, I'm allowed to do it, and you don't have to apply. Well, the deed restrictions clearly include anything to do with landscaping or anything permanent that you're gonna leave out in the public. So again, I think that the deed restriction is a deed restriction. It says you have to apply for it. In a practical sense, nobody's going to, right? And 99% of the people are be okay. But if you're going to get something that you view may be controversial, it'd be worth your while to apply for it. But if you're just putting your typical everyday plants out there, personally, where I live, I wouldn't do it. But the association cannot tell you that because the deed restrictions require it. Whether we agree with the deed restrictions or not, they require it. And that's where I think I agreed to Carol's point, because then if someone was applying for something that might be controversial, she has the ability to say yes or no, regardless if it's only 5, because they can rule based on aesthetics, harmony, and continuity with the existing structures.
And I think the question was whether we would grandfather in any existing pots that exceeded that volume of 40 gallons. My comment would be that would be a completely unenforceable standard, number one. Number two, if there was an instance where someone had previous approval for a specific flower pot, I'd be
never been
open to
pots approved in
grandfathering
the
that
first
in,
place.
but there would have to be a written record of it.
I would say that there's never been, until now, they're not approved anywhere.
I assume that to be the case.
Right, so therefore, there's no grandfathering, because if there was one that didn't meet the criteria,
I was just being
it still wouldn't be
overcautious.
allowed.
So I think we all arrive at the same conclusion.
Okay,
Shall we take a vote?
so let's take a vote. All in favor of the ordinance as,
One more discussion.
what,
I can't support this just because of the size. I agree we need it. I agree that it's a good thing, but I don't think the ARC discussed the size, and I don't think us at this table discussing the size should set that into our policy going forward. So just so you know, I can't support it because of that.
How about if we approve the policy with the size recommendation to be added after the committee makes a recommendation?
How do you approve that?
Well,
That would be tabling it until they bring it back and you approve it at one time.
Well, I just, we've had a lot of discussion on this. I hate to have another, 20 minutes of discussion on it when we're talking about a size number.
I'm happy with you going ahead and voting. I'm just telling you I can't support it.
Well, we can always amend it. We can do 40, and if we needed to.
We have amended at
Amend.
40.
Hmm?
40 gallons.
Okay.
Okay, the recommendation for the ARC recommendation to have no more than 5 flower pots per home with not to exceed 40 gallons per pot is the motion. Moved by Molly, amended by Molly, seconded by Ron, and seconded with the amendment by Ron.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. All right, house colors.
Please see ARC recommendations report on the following page in your board pack. The committee will be requesting the board make a motion to allow all Sandoval neighborhood color schemes to be utilized by all Sandoval neighborhoods.
I think that's we need a motion,
I'll move that.
and we need a second.
Scott,
Okay,
seconded.
Yeah, and my discussion is, I think that's a very good policy going forward, because each neighbor had a color chart, and you might see something that you like in another neighborhood. They're all Sandoval type colors, and in some neighborhoods the colors are pretty much the same. So it will actually, I think, give us the opportunity to spread the color scheme.
The colors are listed in in documents associated with each street. So would each street have to amend their documents?
Yeah, this would, from my understanding, this would allow it them to choose from any of them.
So that would just be irrelevant then?
Yeah, they're so close. Carol, can you explain to them about how close the colors are, and their names are just different?
When we looked at all of the colors, the colors are very similar. They go with the original
Right.
intent of the paler colors, not the old Florida colors or things like that. And we are finding too, because the community's been built over 15 years or more, that especially when you get into like phase 3, well, 15 years ago, I don't think anybody would have thought of painting their house gray. Well, gray is now a very popular, a very light gray, and it's a very nice color that's available in phase 3. That's the one we've seen requests come through for phase 1 and phase 2. The people who have been driving around and saying, I really like that, I like the way the trim looks, but you can't grant a variance just because somebody likes the color, And one of our aims, a big aim with ARC right now, is the community is complete as far as building goes, and one of our goals is to not have this be phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, to have this be Sandoval, our neighborhood. And we thought that this was a good first step and a lot of the homes now, we're getting a lot of applications to paint. And I would say at least half of them come in with colors that are not approved for their street.
I'd just like to chime in real quickly, though, and say, this is how I believe a community should work. And I thank your committee for doing their due diligence and looking at it, because I am a black and white person to a fault sometimes, as you could probably hear in some of my comments, but it takes that ambiguity out of it. And as a board member, when we're voting on things like that, we don't want neighbor against neighbor saying, well, the pot is this size or that size. There's clear defined rules. And what you guys are doing is you're taking stuff that was in 2005 and 2018 and melding it all together, so now we're as one. and it makes it a lot easier as a board, and I just commend you and your committee for doing that for us, and as a whole, I think it's just going to make Sandoval a better community moving forward.
I agree, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion?
Does this policy still give the ARC, come on, the ability to rule on if I want to paint my house one color, but the roof that I have is conflicts with that color, to say that's not acceptable?
I believe that would be an aesthetic type thing. We
That's
would
correct.
still take a look. They would still require an application.
See, phase three, they're all the
Any
same.
application we get
Roofs.
for paint, one of
Roof
us
color in
or
phase three
several
is
of
always
us
the
go out and
same.
look at it. And if you say you want to paint your house green and you have a bright red roof, that may be something that, you know, aesthetically, it
Assuming,
may or may not.
assuming green was an approved color,
Right, you would,
that,
assuming.
so
you know,
that's what I'm concerned about, that you have houses that aesthetically don't match their roofs, unless the guy wants to put a new $80,000 roof on to change the color. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the committee has the ability, based on their view from an aesthetic
Okay.
standpoint, to deny that.
See, that's an academic discussion for phase three, because their roofs are all the same.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is, you're talking about something that's unique to,
Hadn't really-
to
I
phase
don't
one and
look
two.
at that many roofs.
Yeah,
Is
no,
that mine?
they're all the same thing.
And also, we are recommending that we stay with the palette that was developed, that has the house color, the shutter, and the trim. You know, not to say I want this house color and those shutters and that trim, but to do it
Right.
the way it appears.
All or none?
And again, it all has to be gone, anytime anyone paints their home, it has to be approved with an ARC.
Unless it's the same color.
Unless it's exactly the same color.
Or actually, the verbiage is,
Extend to the front door colors as well?
Yes.
Yes.
the verbiage is, if it's in the approved color scheme, you do not need to apply for it.
Right. Okay, all in favor of the motion to establish a unified color policy for Sandoval? Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And Jerry, we'll have these colors updated on our website and available in the office?
Yes.
Yes. They all are.
Carol,
And
you
I'll-
can help us with that. Thank you.
I also may want to say that when you look at these colors and houses that are, because the ARC goes out and has to look at your house. A member that goes out and does that, and they also use views from Google Earth, yeah, so that they can see the roof and the whole 9 yards. But so many, by the time someone is ready to paint their home,
No vote on
the
that.
color has faded so much that it's really hard to discern what that was. And if the homeowner has gone through, if the home's gone through 2 or 3 hands, you don't know what that original color was. It's pretty difficult.
Let's move on to Lincoln accounts to attorney for collections.
There are no new accounts with a balance of greater than $600 for a period greater than 60 days to send the attorney for collections. As such, there's no board business on that agenda item.
Okay, delinquent account suspensions regarding collections.
Following this memo is an AR delinquent report effective January 22nd, 2020. On the report, highlighted in yellow are all accounts that have a delinquency greater than $50 for a period greater than 90 days. Some of these accounts have suspensions in place from previous board meetings. However, effective this month, we are adding suspensions of voting privileges to the penalty for delinquent accounts. As such, we needed to capture all accounts currently at the suspension threshold, so they too will be included in the suspension of voting. I recommend the board make a motion to suspend all accounts with a delinquency greater than $50 for a period greater than 90 days as presented from 1, vehicle access tag activation, 2, identification card access to common areas, amenities, and vehicular gates, 3, home leasing, 4, voting at duly called association meetings where voting takes place.
I so move.
Second.
Discussion?
Have all of these people been notified they're on this list?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next one is account fines regarding deed restriction and rule violations.
Following there are 13 violations we are requesting the board issue a $100 fine on. All accounts fined will receive a hearing letter for February 19th, 2020, where the committee will either uphold the fine or strike the fine based on evidence presented by the HOA and the resident. I recommend the board make a motion to fine each of the 13 accounts $100 as presented.
I so move.
Second?
Discussion?
Discussion. And I'm not sure that I'm on the right place, but when I went through and read the packet, there's somebody that received the letter because the roof needed to be cleaned, and they indicated that it would be cleaned on the 29th of January, and I'm just wondering, is that person included in this grouping?
I would have to know the address to tell you that, but I can tell you what our practice is. We generally, well, when we first started, there were so many local contractors couldn't keep up with it.
Right.
So we got a consensus of a date, and it was conservative, meaning if it was 30 or 45 days out, we told everybody that called in, you got 60 days, because we want people to comply, and it was not reasonable to expect that. So since then, we're on a 30-day grace, meaning someone calls from out of town, and they say, I don't live here during half the year, I'll be back in 3 months, can I wait? The answer is no. But if someone has a hardship and they have full intention to do it, and within 30 days, we try to work with folks, but you have to contact us, otherwise we wouldn't know that.
Well, I'm just thinking, this is the 23rd,
Right.
and if this roof is going to be cleaned in 6 days, do we find them?
Well, I would need to answer your question, I would need to know the address.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't remember which one it
But
was.
keep in mind too, they have a hearing in front of 5 people, and they have every opportunity to point that out. And if that was the case, I'd recommend the committee not to find it.
Marilyn, I believe, as I have it here somewhere, I'm looking for it. I believe that particular person, I found it right here.
It was written in by hand that it was going
Yes,
to be cleaned on the
Right,
29th.
but they've been given notice after notice after notice. It's not the first notice.
Well, in this case, if they're gonna have it cleaned on the 29th, they've got a hearing
They-
on the 9th.
So they'll
They'll
show
be
up at
able
the
to-
hearing and say it was
I've had
cleaned.
done, and it
Yes.
goes away.
Oh, it goes away?
To be clear though, that's not how it works. Because the violation and what they're fined for was the condition of their home at the time it was inspected.
Okay.
So the reason that's important is because if everybody realizes that as long as you comply with a violation, by the time you have a hearing, you'll get the fine waived. What that will do is create triple the amount of time you have to cure a violation, and that will have an overall impact on the aesthetics of the community if a lot of our violations are lasting 2 months rather than 2 weeks, because
Yeah.
it takes by the time it gets to the board, there's another 3 weeks before you get to the hearing, and we violated them 4 weeks prior to coming to the board. So 4, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, and we just rather not extend that period.
This letter was sent out on January 4th, 2018. The first letter.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor of the recommended fining? All opposed? Gate access violations.
On the following page are 10 gate rule violations, which led to gate strikes, 4 of which we have complete information on and requesting the board issue a $100 fine for each one. All accounts fined will receive a hearing letter for February 19th, 2020, where the committee will be either upholding the fine or striking the fine based on evidence presented by the HOA and the individual. I recommend the board to make a motion to fine each of the 4 accounts $100 as presented.
Is there a motion for that?
So
I'll
moved.
move.
Is there a second? Is there a discussion? I have something I'd like to bring up. It's been brought to my attention that, first of all, the number of people that are actually getting these fines versus the number of gate strikes we have verifiable information. And the second thing is that if a vendor comes to your house and they're the one that creates the gate strike, and then the homeowner not only pays for the service, but then gets stuck with a fine because the vendor hit the gate, I find that a little hard to take. And I'd just like some discussion about that from my fellow board members.
So what are the verbiage we're looking at right now is guest versus
Invitees.
invitee. So as per the definition of guest, a person who is invited. So we have guest and invited in the same verbiage as, again, I'm a person of black and white, so I think we're mincing words when we look at guest and invitee. I think it's both one and the same. So that being said, we either change our documents to reflect how the board feels that should be, or our documents say that a guest is an invitee.
Say non-commercial invitee, because frankly, an invitee is a guest. But we can add some language in there to qualify.
I don't think you're on.
We can add some language in there to qualify what exactly is a guest, a non-commercial invitee. Part of the reasoning from my perspective is a lot of contractors service many residents in the community, and they use one resident's gate to access. So from a practical perspective, it doesn't seem like enforcement would be fair. I think it would all give a lot of residents a lot of trepidation if every time they ordered a couch or a pizza, they could be fined due to someone's a commercial vendor coming in. I mean, to me, that's a very different situation than a personal guest, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
Okay, can you give that verbiage again on other than a
A non-commercial invitee.
other than a non-commercial invitee?
Correct.
Vendors, the resident should not have to pay if a vendor is the one that damages the.
Except Al.
Well, that's my concern.
Yeah.
And you know, if a vendor is coming on here and he's making money in Sandoval and he damages our gates, and he has to provide his license and his insurance. And insurance, if he's damaged our property, I would think that at the least it could be covered by that. And so until he pays that fine, I don't think he has the opportunity to do business in Sandoval.
Right, I agree.
So then to change the documents, Jerry, or excuse me, would we need to change the documents, and what would the cost be associated with that? Do we have to go by a community-wide vote?
Yep, so there's 2 parts to the answer. One part answer is yes, you would need to change the documents. That would be a vote of the community, and I would need to get a bid, but for one change, you're looking at least $1,500. But what more likely I think would be practical is that I've already informed the board of my desire to have an ad hoc committee to review the governing documents and to do multiple amendments to our documents and bring that in at that time. The second part of it is not allowing contractors to come in when they're invited by a homeowner is against the law, and I had that confirmed. It's unfortunate, but the association cannot tell Jerry Kern that you cannot invite someone to come see you, contractor or guest. That's your privilege.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I mean, to get involvement from the community as we've evolved from, a declarant controlled to now us deciding what we need to take out from our documents to make it Sandoval friendly, if you will.
But going forward, I am totally opposed to fining a homeowner for a commercial vendor who damages our gates. I don't think that's right.
And I think the provision is ambiguous enough that it would require some interpretation. And so on the enforcement end, I think we make it strictly towards non-commercial.
And I understand the desire, and I share in it, but it's my job to say that in this particular passage, I don't see.
Then then when we have these fines that are being levied, I want them to be specifically stated that it is a commercial vendor that did it, so that I can vote against it.
Okay,
We may have
that's
to-
fair enough.
Okay, so in that instance, are you saying that we would vote on these as in groups, as a vendor or as a guest or as a resident?
Can you
The
tell us
option is-
historically how many homeowners, residents have been fined where it was a vendor that was the?
I can tell you it's less than 5. I
Well,
mean,
that's
but I don't
5
know the
too
number.
many.
Yeah, I don't know the number.
But, again, and it's not that your point is invalid, but again, black and white, it's in our docs. If it's not right, change the docs.
Well, that's
Well,
where
the
I'm
change
going.
in the docs is a $1,500 thing to do, and I'm just telling you, whether it's in the documents or it's not in the documents, there comes to a point where there's common sense. And I do not feel that a homeowner should be punished because a vendor comes in here. If he runs into somebody's car on the way here, it's taken care of by the police. I mean, if he's running into the gate, it's still property damage.
I don't disagree with your point. My point
Right.
being is that you cannot selectively enforce your rules because it doesn't make sense.
Well,
If it doesn't make sense, we
there's
need to
such a
change it.
small minority that you're able to get all the documentations to even find, because at least 80% of them that are gate strikes, you can't chase them down anyway.
But
So
that
it's
one
just not
person,
right.
I'm not saying it's not right, but that one person who sues the HOA because you're not following your documents
Well-
could cost you $100,000 instead of $1,500.
That's fine. Well, then you can vote how you want to. I'm voting against every vendor that comes in here at a homeowner and gets sued
Call
for,
the
because I don't
question.
think it's right.
Let's- let's call the question.
Is there a vendor on this
No,
particular list?
These are
Yes.
all homeowners. All 4 of these
No,
are
these are
homeowners.
homeowners, but there's
Okay.
an issue that this involves.
So this discussion is outside the parameter of this
Yeah.
of this motion.
But I just want it aired.
The other thing that I would have to say is I can't disagree with anything Don's saying about the rationale for what he's saying, so I want to make that clear. But on the other hand, there's rules in place for a reason, and that's so you can't have a board decide to pick and choose what covenants they want to use and what covenants they don't like. There's a method in place, and that is to go to the community and vote for those. So,
Jerry,
but that said,
I think
you
we
can.
called the question. Shouldn't we be voting?
Yeah, we should. I think it's time to call the question. Okay, all in favor of these fines that are listed on the sheet, raise your hand. Okay,
There are none. These are all homeowners.
okay, thank you.
Now, we can have a discussion now about this if you want to.
Well, okay. I mean, I think we've pretty much exhausted that.
I just wanted to ask, is this a state statute that we would be violating?
No, it's a covenant.
Well,
It's not a statute. It's not a statute. I mean, there's a statute that says we must, we have a responsibility as a board to uphold the covenants.
I'm confident that we could, our council would provide us language saying this is subject to interpretation, and anytime there is an ambiguous nature of a provision that we would be able to interpret reasonably to enforce it. I'm confident that we could we can have that in writing by council, so we have some basis moving forward.
And the next issue will not arise until the next board meeting, so it gives us some time to get that language prior to having to vote on anybody that would be a contractor. The homeowner might get the fine for a contractor.
I think you can expect that language by the next board meeting.
Good.
it's been about 2 weeks ago. We paid an electrician $145, and he was in the house 10 minutes. If he hit the gate and I had to pay another 100, I would not be a happy camper. I wasn't even happy with the 145.
That's exactly my point. That's exactly why we're having this discussion.
I don't think anybody would, but there's a fiduciary responsibility that the management company has to uphold the covenants. And if you don't, without a legal interpretation, you're subject to litigation and a lawsuit. So why would we subject ourselves to that, as stupid as that rule may be, until we get that clarified?
Well, it will be by the next
Yeah.
board meeting.
Okay.
Good.
So
Let's
don't
move on
have
to the
any of your
next.
vendors hit the gates.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, additional agenda items.
So I did get an email from Allison Johnson, and let me read that email to the board. Says, good afternoon, board and general manager. I'm requesting you address the following at tonight's meeting on behalf of the landscape chair. The hardwood trees of Sandoval are in need of proper Class C, Class B trimming, and the palms need pruning and defruiting. I'm requesting the board grant $50,000 from the reserves to be used towards this end. Landscape budget will use its entire $15,000 a year in addition to the $50,000. This is not to say that this is sufficient funds to do all the trees at this time, but at least it's a starting point. By adding these two sums together, $65,000, it will enable us to do many trees in one bulk job, so we would be able to get much better cost per tree from the landscapers. It's the opinion of multiple arborists that the trees have this proper trimming soon, underscored. This is not the simple lifting type of trimming that one can get away with on younger trees. Our trees have now come to the age maturity that requires this different approach to their health, beauty, and longevity. We have many large, beautiful specimens that are showing cracking, weeping wounds at their main trunks from the stress of excessive lateral weight. Thank you for your kind attention, and thank you for all you do for Sandoval. So what she's alluding to there is a $50,000 amount in the reserves from 2019 that can be used towards landscape projects. Then she's also talking about a $15,000 number, and that is the budget for 2020 for tree trimming. And if you guys did not remember who was part of the budget process, what I did include in an a la carte item was 1/3 of the amount that we were told. I think it was $28,000, and the thought process was that we could do 1/3 of the trees this year, 1/3 next year, and do it in thirds. So that $28,000 per year was an a la carte item that we just could not get into the budget with the constraints that we had. But we could at least get $15,000 in there. I wanted to put something in there. So that's what she's alluding to.
I think the number that to trim all of our trees when we were discussing the budget was about $155,000. And what she's gotten is a bid that was $75,000 to do the $155,000 job. And we just recently trimmed the trees at Verdmont, so those are out of the picture. And she's hoping that we could use $65,000. So really, we're getting a $155,000 job for, a relatively bargain price. And I thought it was at least worth entertaining.
One point of clarification on the $50,000 for reserves. Isn't it fair to say that there's a 3-year $50,000 allocation for
Correct.
2019, 2020, and 2021? So if we would be using $50,000 this year, that would not be available for next year.
Well,
Correct.
it was available last year,
Right.
and this year, so it would not be available next year.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be correct.
Okay.
But it was one of the things that was paramount on her wish list, that there was no way you could fund that. And when she got the price down to the $65,000, $75,000 range, it was worth thinking about. So,
And you mentioned that she is, and we're very fortunate to have her doing this work, first I want to mention, but you mentioned that we're basically getting a $155,000 job for about $75,000.
I had it bid out, or I had a contractor tell me it was $84,000 is the number that I was told. So when I presented to at the budget workshop, I divided that into 3, and that's what I presented. It was $28,000 per year for 3 years. So what she's been able to do is get it down. And my number wasn't hard. It was a soft number.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could have done more. But she was able to significantly reduce that number from at least 84 to where she's at now. Yeah.
well, and she's also, today she was talking to another vendor, getting another bid on trimming the trees. So it's, it's just not just a single thing. So,
Will that cover us for the entire year
well,
of 2020?
I'd like Scott to speak on that.
Again, this has been something that's been on the radar for years. As we can see, when we had Irma come through, we had significant damage in our hardwood trees and the ficus especially, because they hadn't been touched since they were planted. So what Allison has done is exemplary, and I applaud her for that. And I think for the board not to look at this source of funding in the way she has enumerated would be a disservice, because if we look at any of these mature trees, if we lose them in a hurricane or any wind event, we'd be talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace them with trees that are minimally sized. So this, to me, is well worth that money. Her funding sources, to me, are just brilliant, and I would agree to using them there. And again, working towards, as she says, this is not to say that it's sufficient funds to do all of the trees, but at least it's a starting point, and it truly is, because the sooner we get these trees done properly, instead of being reactive, we'd be saving the HOA money in the long run.
And to that point, I believe insurance doesn't cover the replacement of trees, and we are required to replace the trees. So this is a real issue.
It is a real issue.
So the question would be, do we make a motion approving an up to number, or do we ask her to get a proposal to bring back to the board?
I will move to have a $50,000 from reserve, $15,000 from our budget.
Operating budget.
To do a total of $65,000 worth of pruning this year. That is the motion.
Can we, before we second it, can we require 2 or 3 bids in there to make sure we're getting a good price? The
I'd
best
say
price?
2 bids.
2 bids, okay.
To require 2 bids.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be an excellent idea.
So that's the motion, and I have put it forth. So I guess you're calling for a second?
I'm calling for a second. Marilyn? Marilyn's going to second. And I'm now calling for discussion.
You comfortable with that, Scott?
Absolutely.
Under discussion, did she not talk, I was under the impression that she had talked to several landscapers.
Well, I know she has. I can't say several. I know she's talked to Crawford, and I know she was talking to someone else today, because when I called her on the phone, she was talking.
Yeah, here's a great opportunity.
So.
Any one of these 5 people that are bidding our contract, go for a bid right now, and you're going to get the best possible, because they all want to impress us.
Well,
right?
I'm going to also qualify that a little bit, because we're going to get the trees trimmed out on Verdmont, and we got one bid, and then we got a second bid, and it was significantly lower. And it's one of the companies that's bidding our other contract. And then when we delved into the qualifications of the person doing this kind of trimming, they didn't have an arborist or a certified person. So, you had a guy with a chainsaw. So, I think that you need to, look where the bid's coming from and what the qualifications of the company are. So.
And I think we could expand that if we're going to do it as a bid versus RFP, that is one of the contingencies upon your bidding.
Well,
you have to be a certified
I think when
arborist.
your landscape person is dealing with this, I think she's not going to have a guy with a chainsaw.
She is not.
So, okay. Any other discussion? No, I'm waiting to vote. Okay, is everybody ready to vote? All in favor of this expenditure? Okay.
Adjourn.
Okay, now, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Okay, now we adjourn the meeting, and we have an open forum for resident comments.
There are none?
Then I suggest we then adjourn fully, and have a good evening.